there was a large proportion of Lutherans somewhere in Scandinavia that started blowing up non-Lutherans. Or no, sorry, let's be absolutely right, started massacring peasants. Do you think that people would say, hang on a minute, let's not criticize Martin Luther. He did that by the standards of his time. We shouldn't criticize his followers all that much. We shouldn't point out what he said and so on. No, we just say, you know, don't go and massacre peasants. Full stop. It was rubbish at the time, it's rubbish now. It's the same with the Quran.
You're missing the point. If you're failing to judge...
You are about to witness an intense debate that took place a few years ago between Douglas Murray and a Muslim scholar on whether Islam is a religion of peace. This debate remains ever relevant even today and gets even more heated towards the end of this video. Douglas Murray did not hold back.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have to look at facts. We should also just quickly, if I may, refer something to the wording of tonight's debate. Ayan's already mentioned this, but I mean, let me put it this way. You're I'm sure, a liberal-minded New York audience, or at least I hope you are. We'll see. But I imagine that if the motion we had here tonight was Christianity is a religion of peace, we get to the Q&A, perhaps even before, and somebody would say, if the other side were arguing for that, somebody would say...
Hey Veracity, welcome back to the channel. It's your girl VeraMoore, and I'm back with another reaction video. Today, I'll be reacting to Christopher Thompson, and this is Religion of Peace. Douglas Murray storms Muslim apologist with truths about Islam. So this is about Islam, Douglas Murray. I'm sure you guys are already familiar with all of this. Honestly, can't wait to dive into the video. Let's go on, guys.
What about the Crusades? What about that? And then there'd be some other clever clogs who'd say, what about that Florida pastor the other week? That was a nasty business. That's Christianity for you. If we'd had tonight, Judaism is a religion of peace, the other side were trying to argue that. Sure as anything. There'd be people popping up in the hall tonight saying, oh, there's this bit in one of the Old Testament books, really, really bad. All sorts of massacres going on. Why don't you talk about that? There might even be people trying to say that, the argument that Judaism was a religion of peace couldn't be argued because people would say, look at what Israel is doing. And isn't that a direct response? And so on. So let's not have a debate about Islam and whether or not Islam is a religion of peace without talking about the facts to do with Islam. It's an absurd situation we're in, where nothing that anyone does whilst being Muslim is any responsibility of Islam's. Yet anything anyone does whilst being a Christian or a Jew is responsibility of all Christians, all Jews. Let's make this as straightforward as I can. Take the categorization that eminent scholars like Bernard Lewis, Ibn Waraq have made. Let's say Islam is a very, very complex thing. And the best way I can do this in the very short time I have is say you have three Islams. Islam 1, 2, and 3. Islam 1, the Quran and the life of Muhammad and the Hadith. Islam 2, the tradition of the Sharia. Islam 3, what Muslims do now. The first of those things, Islam, the Quran, and so on, is bad. It is bad. There is a lot of violence in it. And what's worse, the peaceful verses are superseded by the violent verses. The violent verses also, sadly, are more numerous in number. Then you've got the life of Muhammad. Again, a bad man. A very bad man, it has to be said. Not a great role model, if you look at it. Takes child brides, abuses a small girl, multiple wives, himself a warrior, himself a war criminal, himself beheads Jews. This, I would have thought, would be a signal of not great peacefulness. Then you've got the tradition of the Sharia. Again, not great peacefulness. Still, no schools of Sharia that people in this hall would want to submit to. And thirdly, what Muslims do now. Thankfully, there is some hope in that one. Because most Muslims, thank goodness, I almost said thank God, but old habits die hard. Most Muslims don't do what those texts say. Because they exercise their judgment as moral beings without having to refer to defunct holy books. It is not a small thing. It's not, as it were, a detail. It's not like a wacky Florida pastor. That you've got the largest Sunni state of Saudi Arabia, the most important Sunni state in the world, the most extraordinary closed prison of a society. It's not a detail. It's not a one-off nut job that the Shiite Republic of Iran is what it is, led by the people it's led by. That is not an accident, it's not a detail. The thing that worries me is that although tonight we hear from the fellow panelists here about how Islam is a religion of peace, the fact is that the people who are making the decisions in the religion, the people who are preaching the religion, the heads of that religion, people like Sheikh Qaradawi, who broadcasts anti-Semitic, the most appalling filth every week on the main networks, that is the faith that's speaking for you guys. I wish that, Ziba, you were on every week on Al Jazeera, but you're not.
Islam is never a religion of peace. You know, their prophet, Muhammad, was a warlord. And so that is why they believe in violence. You know, everything about them is just being violent. You have to take Allah by force. You have to believe in their God. If I don't believe in your God, it shouldn't be a do or die affair. They are making this a do or die affair. After the whole 9/11 incident, they actually danced, they rejoiced, they celebrated. They were so happy. I mean, who does that? It's just crazy. And I'm so scared for them. Because growing up in that kind of environment where violence is the order of the day, they have a lot of suicide bombers, and it is pathetic. Islam is never a religion of peace. It is never. Even when you go to Muslim schools, you know, they have these schools where they teach their children. They use canes to beat these kids if they don't get it right. You have to get the Arabic language correctly, where they teach them the Arab things. Growing up with that kind of upbringing is just crazy. You never see that in churches. They don't force you to read the Bible in church. They don't force you to do anything. It is willingly. They teach you. Let's go on.
Qaradawi is. The problem is that Islam is an unstable component. As a religion, an unstable component. 1,000 years ago, the Mu'tazilites tried to reform the religion. They were wiped out. The fact is that Islam is many things. Many, many things. But to say it's a religion of peace is nonsense. It's to ignore reality. It's to ignore very difficult but necessary facts. Not paradigms, but facts. To say that Islam is a religion of peace is to say something based entirely on hope. It's to elevate a hope into truth. And I hope, as you all know, history teaches us that's a very bad thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smart.
Douglas Murray's claim that we cannot evaluate whether
Douglas Murray said it all. Islam is a lot of things. Islam is so many things. But a religion of peace. Islam is not a religion of peace. It's a religion of war, torment, torture, pain, anguish. To call Islam a religion of peace is crazy, it's absurd. And it is just the truth. I love the fact that we finally have somebody that is bold enough. Somebody bold enough to come out there and say these things. Not so many people are bold enough to say all of this, you know. But I'm grateful, I am glad that we have somebody out there, coming out there, you know, to say all of these things. And how pathetic. So Islam is a lot of things, but it is not a religion of peace. And it is just crazy.
Islam is a religion of peace without acknowledging violent acts committed by its adherents, including those cited by historical and religious leaders, challenges the narrative that all religions are equally scrutinized. This is a crucial point in understanding the broader discourse on religious violence. For instance, when discussing the violent passages in the Old Testament or the history of the Crusades, commentators and scholars often highlight these elements to argue about Christianity's historical belligerence. However, Murray argues that a similar analytical lens is not applied to Islam, where there is a significant history of conquests and battles led by its founder Muhammad, which are often glossed over or rationalized in Western discourse. Statistically, the global rise in Islamist terrorism has been well documented by institutions like the Global Terrorism Index, which often shows that groups espousing radical interpretations of Islam commit a substantial percentage of terrorist acts worldwide. This data is critical as it underscores the real-world implications of ideologies that, while claimed by only a minority within Islam, have a disproportionate impact on global security. Murray's argument is not just about theological debates, but touches on a broader societal issue: the importance of maintaining a single standard of criticism across all beliefs to ensure a balanced and fair discourse. By applying a double standard where one religion is scrutinized less intensely than others, society risks not only intellectual dishonesty, but also failing to address the root causes of religiously motivated violence. This, in turn, hampers efforts to develop effective counterterrorism strategies and fosters a culture of resentment and suspicion among those who feel that their concerns about Islamist extremism are not taken seriously.
There's a tendency when discussing Islam to suspend the tools that we have learnt and studied, that you have studied as well, that we use to analyze every other piece of scripture and literature in the world. And that is that we recognize that texts do not speak for themselves. We recognize that when we interpret scriptures and texts and books and poetry, that they are contextualized, that we have methodologies to approach them. When we're reading Shakespeare, when we're reading anything, we recognize that there's a way to interpret text, and there are schools of thought and differences over how to approach texts. Now, if we contextualize Martin Luther and say the Reformation was a good thing, despite the fact that he said, kill and slay the peasants, wherever you find them, when they followed Thomas Müntzer, when he was calling for not just breaking away from the papal authority, but also for rebelling against the monarchies and the dictators that they found themselves in. Martin Luther sided with the tyrants against Müntzer and said, kill the peasants wherever you find them. Despite that, I'm prepared to say the Reformation was a good thing. And the reason I'm prepared to say that is that Martin Luther must not be judged by the standards of civilization that we, after an accumulation of thousands of years, have arrived at. He must be judged by the standards of civilization that were around during his time.
Douglas Murray is about to offer a powerful response in a moment, but let me first highlight something important in response to what was just said. Firstly, the comparison between religious texts and literary works, like those of Shakespeare, is flawed in a fundamental way. Shakespeare's plays, while influential in the fields of literature and culture, are not used as a basis for legal systems, government policies, or contemporary ethical behavior. They are understood and taught as products of their time, with a clear distinction between their historical context and modern applicability. In contrast, religious texts like the Quran are actively used by many as guidelines for personal conduct and community norms. They are not merely historical documents, but are seen as timeless directives by followers. Furthermore, when ancient texts prescribe specific behaviors or make moral claims, they often carry implications for present-day actions and policies. For example, if certain passages of the Quran are interpreted as endorsing violence under specific circumstances, these interpretations can and do influence the behavior of believers today, justifying actions that are incompatible with modern human rights standards. This direct impact on contemporary ethical and legal systems necessitates a more critical and context-aware analysis than might be applied to purely historical or literary texts.
If there were currently Lutheran, there are Lutherans around, you meet them occasionally in Scandinavia and so on, very nice, very nice it is, and peaceable guys they are by and large. If, however, there was a large proportion of Lutherans somewhere in Scandinavia that started blowing up non-Lutherans, or no, sorry, let's be absolutely right, started massacring peasants. Do you think that people would say, hang on a minute, let's not criticize Martin Luther, he did that by the standards of his time, we shouldn't criticize his followers all that much, we shouldn't point out what he said and so on. No, we just say, you know, don't go and massacre peasants, full stop. It was rubbish at
Douglas,
the time, it's rubbish now, it's the same with the Quran.
You're missing the point. If you're failing to judge...
This was such a very insightful debate and is
Islam and peace doesn't go together. Just don't go together. Except if we just want to, you know, lie to ourselves. As a Christian, okay, mention one Islamic state you would love to go and live in. Mention one Islamic country you would love to live in. I can't even mention any. And that's just the truth. There's no Islamic country I want to live in because there's nothing. There's no Islamic country I want to live in. Mention one Islamic country you want to live in I am a Christian and I cannot even mention any Islamic country I would want to live in. Because I know there's no Islamic country you go to that you'll not be persecuted if you are not a Muslim. As a Christian. Because you cannot even worship, you cannot worship God. It is a sin. My brother used to attend a Muslim school. In that school, you must not mention Jesus. Imagine. That was when he was in secondary school. High school. High school, you cannot mention Jesus. If not, you'll be sanctioned. It's a sin. It's a crime. What's all of that? But if you go to a Christian school, they will never tell you not to mention whoever's name you want to mention. They will never tell you not to pray in whatever religion. So why are Muslims like this? Islam is anything but a religion of peace. And that is just the sad truth. I'm glad that Douglas keeps talking about this movement. I know Muslims will definitely hate him, but we don't care. It's speeding far. What are your thoughts? What do you guys think about this video? Drop a comment down below. I totally enjoyed this. If you enjoyed the video as much as I did, give it a huge thumbs up and please share this video. And if you're new to the channel, join Veracity. Use the subscribe button below, turn on the post notification bell so you can always be the first person to know whenever a new video drops. And that's it, guys. See you in my next video. Bye, guys.